For today's art class, we're going to need some watercolour paper, and as usual I tape it down. Now this tape, I'll give you a little hint, this tape I use over and over again. I just peel it off and stick it to the side. If I do artworks where it goes right to the edge, where the paint goes to the edge, I don't reuse it. I throw it out because it will just damage the next piece of watercolour paper. But I'm very happy to reuse it when I'm creating pictures that stay within the middle part of the paper. So we'll also need some watercolours. We'll use some blues and a bit of orange and browns. We need a container or two of the water, nice clean water, and we need a variety of paintbrushes, a pencil and an eraser. Now we'll be using a pigment ink pen. So this one is a very fine one. I might use a thicker one, I'm not quite sure, but this was the one that I could see, so I grabbed that one. And a variety of paintbrushes, so you use what you feel comfortable painting with. Alrighties, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do when drawing our stylized whale is pretty much a really nice curved loop. So we want to imagine that his head starts about here, and his tail is going to finish up, say, about here. And what I need to do is create a lovely smooth curved line there. So I'll just start here. Might make that go a little bit rounder actually, because I want the tail to kind of finish like that. So that's got to come up and around. Alright, so that's okay. I'll just rub out those other pieces, other lines that we won't be using. I'll end up rubbing out all of these lines and make them really quite faint. So we want that to come kind of down there like that, so that's going to be his tail, up and around. Alright, so the next thing that we need to do, we're going to kind of create the head part. And we want the swirl of his tail to finish like that there, because we're going to do another tail that's up around like the other side of his tail, and we want to give him a bit of body. So this is going to be rounded off because this is the head, and we still want it to go in a nice curved shape along there as well for his head. So that's going to do me for now. I'm hoping that you can see that. I can see that on my monitor, so you should be able to see that there. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is create the other side of his tail. So we'll just do that like that. Kind of make it evenly sized, I guess. I might give it a bit more of a flick maybe. Like that. Okay, now we need to give him some sort of fin happening, so we kind of picture about halfway on his body, I guess, so just around here, and I'm just going to draw kind of like something that's going to come there. And rub out the bits that I'm not going to use. Now, a lot of whales have that ribbing down the bottom. So this is just, I don't really have a photo or anything that I'm looking at. I'm just kind of making this up just a little bit, but I've done a whale that looks similar to this. So what I'm going to do is do the ribbing down here, make it go just below where his fin starts, and just finish it off there like that. And the ribbing is just going to have like lines basically, just like that. Okay, so where am I going to do his eye? I'm not quite sure. I might just pop his eye, maybe just here. So I'm just going to do like a little circle, and then I'll just do some rings around his eye, just like that. And that's pretty much it. That's the only drawn part that I'm doing of this whale. So there he is there, or she. I always say he, but I don't know why. Okay, so it's got a couple of really lovely curvy lines. I could possibly make the tail a bit bigger. I might make the tail a bit, oh no, I'll just leave it like that for now. It doesn't really matter. This is just to show you a technique. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is go over these pencil lines with this pigment liner. Now, you need to use a pigment ink liner because we are going to go over with watercolor and water, and we don't want it to go all yucky. So we don't want it to dissolve in the water. We want it to stay there, and these ones stay there. You could probably find other brands. So I'm just very carefully, well, actually not too carefully, because I like that rough look. I might just do another little line underneath there. Make his tail swirl around. Make that nice flowing movement around there. And you can see that I'm actually not tracing over that part perfectly, and that does not matter one little bit. Might start up there. Come around. I do like to keep it nice and smooth though, like keep that lovely round. But you can see I've got little bumps and things like that, and that's perfect because, you know, a real whale doesn't have perfectly smooth skin. They've got lumps and variations in their skin. So now I'm just doing the rib part. Notice I'm just keeping my hands still on that, and I'm just using like that part to make it nice and smooth. You'll probably develop your own way of making drawing easier for you. That helps me keep a nice smooth line. Okay, now his eye, I'm just going to just squiggle it around a bit and just really very roughly do some circles around that part. And I'm actually going to just add a little bit of like, I don't know, wrinkles or something just around that part. And I might just do a little bit of shading just there where I think, and I'm just doing like little squiggles. It's just to create a little bit of shading. Okay, so the next step is going to be rubbing out much of the pencil lines. If a few of the pencil lines stays through, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to even rub out your pencil line. This is just one way that you can do it. You might like to keep your pencil line because you like that look of different layers of different materials. So that's perfectly up to you. But if you do erase or rub out the pencil lines, just make sure that you get all of the little rubbery bits off, because you don't want any of that to be left there when you're doing your watercolor part. Okay, so the next step now is watercolor. Okay, so what I'm going to do is wet my whale with the water. So I'm going to pre-paint the whole whale with the water. And it shouldn't take me too long to do. And then what I'm going to do is just let the watercolor paints do their magic. So I'm not going to fill in the whale area. I'm just going to choose a couple of different types of blues, and I'm just going to paint the I'm just going to, you know, dapple the paint on and just see where the paint goes, and then just adjust as I'm painting to see where or what areas actually need a bit more paint, or what colour I think might suit getting painted where. That tail's a bit wonky, but that's okay. This is all about just having fun. Okay, so I am thinking maybe this blue might be the way to go. Oh yeah, I like that. And already I've dappled a little dot there, and you know what? I'm very happy with that, because we're actually going to create a little look that's like that. Now, on the top here, I am just dappling this blue because I still want some white patches to be left. Sometimes when whales approach the top of the surface of the water, the sunlight dapples through the water and onto their skin, and it creates this, you know, effect where some white is still left. So it's really the reflection of the light. So I'm going to just keep that happening with that whale, just like this, so especially on the top, because that's the part where you'll see the dappling effect. Now I'm still only using the one colour here, and you can see how many variations are happening in just that one colour, which is fantastic. And that works because of the amount of water that you put with the watercolour. So some of the watercolour has very little amounts of the water added to it, and what happens is that goes quite dark. But some of the watercolour has more water added to it and it goes lighter. So what I'm going to do on the bottom to create shadowing, I'm mixing the blue that I've put on the top of him, and I'll pop a little bit of this browny grey colour there, and I'll paint that across the bottom. But I think what I might do is also add a little bit of orangey brown to that, just to give it a tiny little bit of variation. I don't want too much happening in there, just a little bit, and that will actually water down. So I just want to create that just a little bit of contrast in the colour. So then what I'm going to do is continue with the colour that I mixed, and I still have a little bit of that orange in it, which I'm perfectly happy about. So it's creating some really great colours there, nice variation. Get a little bit more of the blue, I think. Dapple that along there. Just keep dappling that, especially up the top near the tail, and up this part too, because that's where the sunlight will be hitting him or her. And I'll just kind of paint. I might add a little bit of that orange to that tail too. Now remember that orange and blue are complementary colours on the colour wheel. So they're colours that go together really nicely. Oh, look how that's just seeping to that part there. I like that look. So I'm going to press pause and just continue working on this whale, and once I'm done I will stop and show you the next step. Now all I'm doing here is adding a little bit of grey to the bottom and just adding it, just creating just a little variation in his top half of his body and the bottom half of his body. I've just added a bit of blue to the grey. I needed to pat up a little bit because it had puddled quite a bit, so just wanted to create different colours, show lots of variation, use leaving white on my paper as a colour to the whale as well. I dappled a little over, so I gave it a second layer. It wasn't quite dry, but I'm fine with that. You can actually let it dry if you like, and then dapple over the top again. Just adding a bit more blue, making it stand out quite a bit. Continue to dapple. I did around his eye, and I wanted just to spread that out. I just wanted the eye region to just be a little bit darker so you could still see that pigment ink pen underneath. Okay, so he's almost dried off. Now, at this point you can do many things. You can leave it. you can give your whale another coat of watercolor and add more intensity to the colorings of him. And what that will also do is create lots of layers as well, which will make him more interesting. You can also do a technique that we've used previously when we did the nebulas. So what you can actually do is add a little bit of water to some watercolor. Now we don't want humongous flicks, and we don't want it to flick all over the whole whale. So probably not a good idea to use your hand. Let's see what I can find. I might just use a piece of tissue to cover it up so it doesn't get everywhere. And what I'm going to do is just flick little dots of blue to make it look like it's a little bit like Under the Sea. If you like, you can actually flick it over the top of your whale. It adds lots of interesting effect as well. And you don't have to do it over the whole lot. You can just do swirls. And you can see that I've barely used any watercolor, and I'm making the little dappled areas quite small. I don't want really huge, large dots. It's just to create an effect, like it's bubbles in the sea. So hopefully you've enjoyed following this technique using pigment ink pen and using watercolor over the top. You can actually do it the opposite way. You can also paint with your watercolor, then do the pigment pen over the top, which is another interesting technique. It looks fairly similar, but sometimes, you know, that allows you to follow the flow of the path that the watercolor has taken. So you can see over here, I've gone outside of the lines, and that's perfectly okay, because this was not a painting where I did it perfectly. It was a painting showing freedom, and I like that fluid movement of the watercolor as well, because after all, whales are under the sea. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video today. If you have any questions, don't forget to pop them in the comments. I would really appreciate it if you liked or subscribed or did both to Free Art Class Bit of a Hippie. Don't forget, I also have a Facebook group called Free Art Class, where you can post up any artworks that you've created from any of my videos that I've shared on YouTube. I'd love to see them up there. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.